What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Paul Brettel here. As always, thank you for joining me. I'm the site editor over at Dairyland Express, where we cover the Packers, Brewers, Bucks, and Badgers. I also have a new article out every Monday and Friday over at Cheesehead TV. And as it says at the bottom of the screen, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can find me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. So for today's episode, I wanted to discuss 4 recent articles that I've written. All of them are over at Dairyland Express. One of them is pertaining to the big news from Wednesday that the Green Bay Packers are reportedly going to add free agent edge rusher Whitney Mercilus, who was released from the Houston Texans earlier this week. I also wanted to discuss the upcoming trade deadline, Rashan Gary's play, and then just briefly touch on the role players, the backup players, and how they've really stepped up in recent weeks for this Packers team. But before we get to all that, let's start with the big news, Whitney Mercilus. So it's not an official done deal yet, or at least not at the time that I am recording this, but as I said, he is expected to join the Green Bay Packers. And for obvious reasons, depth at the edge rusher position is a big concern. Zadarius Smith, we don't know when he's going to return. Chauncey Rivers was placed on injured reserve with a season-ending knee injury just a few weeks ago. And even Preston Smith left Sunday's game. He played only 8 snaps before leaving with an oblique injury. Now, the positive with Preston is that it doesn't sound long-term. There is even a chance that he could play this Sunday. As Matt LaFleur always says early in the week when asked about these injuries, the guys are going to get, Preston Smith is going to get up until game time to prove that he can go, but there is the potential that they will be without him. So this edge rusher room, and even if when Preston Smith is healthy, it's very thin. They still have a very formidable duo with Preston and Rashaan Gary, but it's not as if those two can play every snap. They need snaps off. Jonathan Garvin has stepped up. We'll talk about him more here in a bit. But even with 3 edge rushers, and if an injury happens, which this room really can't sustain, you need more than 3 edge rushers, obviously, to get through a game, to get through a season. And while Jonathan Garvin, Keepa Galaya, Ladarius Hamilton, they're all younger guys with potential, and we've seen Garvin display his recently. This is a Green Bay Packers team with Super Bowl expirations. They don't necessarily want to have to lean heavily on young players that have potential to play a number of meaningful snaps. And currently, just with the injuries that have taken place, with Preston Smith might not being able to play, that's what they're going to have to do. So that's why they brought in Whitney Mercilus. Now, I was asked on Twitter if I think that the Mercilus edition is forecasting what Green Bay thinks is going to happen with Zadarius Smith this season. Of course, we can't rule it out. We don't know whether he's going to return or not, and maybe even the Packers don't know at this point either. But I don't think that that's something that we can look to at this point in time and say, "Oh, they signed Mercilus. That means Zadarius isn't going to be back." I think that they just are in desperate need of depth at that position, as we just discussed. So Mercilus, he's a 2012 first-round pick by the Houston Texans. Spent his entire career there. His 2015-2016 seasons were the best of his career. Had 140 pressures, 26 sacks over those 2 seasons. 2017, he missed a good amount of time due to an injury. 2018 and 19, he put up solid numbers, 100 pressures, 14 sacks. Nowhere near his production from his best seasons, but still a productive pass rusher. 2020, however, is when we start to see him slip, and honestly, his production fell off a cliff. He logged just 20 pressures last season, and he was actually Pro Football Focus's worst graded edge rusher. That's right. Out of all the edge rushers last season, he was PFF's worst graded. So it was a rough season. This year, he's tallied 3 sacks in 6 games, and he's only playing about 50% of the snaps so far this season. He's been in a more rotational role. So 3 sacks in 6 games on a bad team with playing only 50% of the snaps, that's actually not that bad. But when you look at that, he's only generated 5 pressures and 3 of them have turned into sacks. That's also not sustainable either. So just something to keep in mind. The sack numbers do look good, all things considered, the amount of play and all of that. But is that pace sustainable? Odds are it isn't. So coming here to the Green Bay Packers, Rashaan Gary, Preston Smith, they're still going to be the dudes. They're still the guys. But as I mentioned, the Packers want a veteran presence to lean on, and Mercilus can provide that. At his best, he was a pass rusher. He got after the quarterback. That's what the Green Bay Packers, how they need to utilize him here. 3rd downs, obvious passing situations. Let him pin his earbacks. Let him go get the ball. Let him go get the quarterback. That's when that's where he's going to be best in this system. And hopefully that's how we see them utilize and not try to put too much on him or try to have him do too much. We can look at last Sunday's game, Jalen Smith, who the Green Bay Packers just signed recently as well. They were having him in there on early downs. He was someone they were having in there on running plays. That's not where he's going to find his success. It's a niche role. It's a limited spot. But Jalen Smith, for example, he should just be out there as a blitzer and in obvious passing situations. Whitney Mercilus, he should just be out there, third downs, obvious passing situations. That's where Green Bay is going to get the most out of him. That's where he's going to have the opportunity to make the biggest impact. So we'll see how it all plays out. But in terms of depth, in terms of making this addition, totally get it with the state of the edge rusher room. And I like the potential that's there as long as everyone's expectations are tempered. Again, this isn't going to be 2015, 2016 Whitney Mercilus. Heck, it's not even going to be 2018, 2019. But hopefully in that limited role, if he's playing to his strengths, we can see him find success. So next up, other article I wrote, I think I wrote this last Friday already. The trade deadline's approaching. It is actually coming up. It's November 2nd. And we know as Packer fans, every single year, it seems like the Packers are linked to a big name, but the trade deadline comes and goes and no move has been made. But I think that there is the real possibility that this year could be different. And the Whitney Mercilus edition is a great example of that. Whitney Mercilus, Rasul Douglas, Jalen Smith, the trade for Randall Cobb, signing Quinton Dunbar. And I know Quinton Dunbar was just released, but he's a veteran. They brought him in because there was a need. It just didn't end up working out. But those moves, the cap moves that they've made this year, Ken Ingles, Packers salary cap guru on Twitter, through restructured deals, voided years added, the Packers have pushed, by his calculations, $50.9 million worth of cap charges from 2021 to future years. And of that $50.9 million, 29.2 of it is going to just 2022. If you thought this year's offseason was difficult with the cap cut, with the contracts, the roster decisions that had to be made, just wait till next spring, friends. It is going to be even more challenging. Brian Gutekunst's Russ Ball, they're going to have to do some serious financial gymnastics. But that proves my point. Those additions, those cap maneuvers that they've made, that's the Green Bay Packers going all in. I know this Green Bay Packers version of all in might not match what some people think all in is, but it is. They have their chips pushed to the table. They are doing whatever they can to win a Super Bowl this year because, of course, elephant in the room, we don't know what the future holds for Aaron Rodgers or what 2022 holds for a number of these players. Devontae Adams, Adarius Smith, Preston Smith, Billy Turner. There are a lot of big names on this team that may not be here next year. So the Green Bay Packers are all in. And because of all those moves that I just listed off, I think that's why if there is going to be a year, if there is going to be a time that they make a move at the trade deadline, I mean, the last 6 months are telling us that this is going to be it. So just something to keep in mind as that trade deadline does approach. Next up, I want to discuss, and I posted this article over at Dairyland Express on Wednesday, Rashan Gary. He is leaving his mark on this season up to this point. Now, the sack numbers, they're not really there at all. Pro Football Reference has him at 1.5 sacks. Pro Football Focus has him at 2 because they don't count half sacks, and nobody should. But his sack numbers aren't gaudy whatsoever. But he's still affecting the game. He's getting after the quarterback. By Pro Football Focus numbers, he has 25 pressures. A pressure is a sack, a hit, or a hurry. Any one of those counts as a pressure. So he has 25 total this season. That's the 9th most among edge rushers. He has 11 solo tackles. That ranks 22nd. He has 6 assisted tackles. That ranks 8th. He's 27th in stops among all edge rushers. So a stop is a play that where you hold the offense to 0 or 1 yard, or if it's 3rd and 4, for example, and Rashan Gary makes a tackle 3 yards so they don't convert the first down, that would constitute a stop as well. So he ranks 27th in that category. And then run defense, both he and Preston Smith deserves a lot of credit as well. Those two have done an excellent job of containing the edge, keeping the runners from being able to bounce it outside, and letting the interior defenders make a play. Gary ranks 18th in run defense grade. It's also worth noting that as a team, the Green Bay Packers are yet to allow a 100-yard rusher this season. So the run defense has been, not going to say it's been excellent or stellar or one of the best in the league, because they're still giving up, I think, 4.5 yards per carry. But the big thing is that they haven't, and the offense has helped, but they haven't let the opponent lean on the run game. They haven't let the opponent's run game take the game over, as we've seen in years past. Rashan Gary, as well as Preston Smith, have been a big part of that. So getting the pressures, being in on the tackles, uh, his play against the run, those aren't necessarily things that are always going to, catch our eyes when we're watching the game on television, but they're incredibly important, and they're how a player can affect the game. And that's what Rashaan Gary's doing. There's this quote, and I'll read it here in a second, from Mike Smith, the Green Bay Packers outside linebackers coach. This is from 2020, I believe, where he talks about just how important pressures are, because compared to sacks, pressures can show consistency. And as a pass rusher, that's the important part. So this is Mike Smith here. He goes, I care about pressure affecting the quarterback. That's the number one thing, he calls it. I'll take a guy that does his job play after play after play, being consistent and have 0 sacks, but does his job and affects the quarterback. Mike Smith explains it well there. Pressures, having high pressure totals, shows consistency. And eventually, those sack numbers are going to come. So Rashaan Gary, he may not be, again, popping up with those gaudy sack numbers, but he's getting after the quarterback. His teammates are absolutely benefiting from it, and he's helping against the run as well. He's been very, very good this season, especially considering Green Bay Packers are without Zadarius Smith. He's helped fill that void in production, and he's also filling a similar role in that moving around. We saw Zadarius Smith standing up over the A gap a number of times last season. Rashaan Gary's doing that as well. So he's filled that role well in Zadarius's absence. Last item for today. They also posted this at Dairyland Express on Wednesday. Role players and the backups are stepping up. So, of course, the Green Bay Packers are 5-1, and they are 5-1, a big reason because of their star players. Every team who's going to be successful needs their star players to perform. Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, Kenny Clark, every one of that ilk. And they are. They're playing very well. But football is the ultimate team game. As the old saying goes, it takes all 53. And honestly, it takes all 69 players on the team if you include the practice squad. With the elevations, especially this season, injuries happen. It takes the entire team. And that's what we're seeing from the Green Bay Packers. They have dealt with numerous injuries to key, crucial players. Of course, David Bakhtiari's been out, although he did return to practice today. Elton Jenkins missed time. Josh Myers missed time. Jair Alexander, Zadarius Smith. We don't know if Darnell Savage or Preston Smith's going to play this upcoming week. They've sustained a number of injuries. And again, not to take anything away from the stars of this team. They've all played very well and have been the catalyst behind Green Bay's 5-1 record. But a number of the role players have stepped up as well. Dean Lowry has been very good since the San Francisco game. On Tuesday at Dairyland Express, I had an article just completely devoted to him because he's not typically someone who's going to put up stats or show up on the stat sheet. Does the dirty work. And we saw that against the Niners and against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the last 2 weeks, he's really shown up on the stat sheet. He has 8 pressures and 2 sacks. Jonathan Garvin, he stepped up without Zadarius, so his playing time has expanded. Against the Bears, when Preston left, he saw, I believe it was over 50 snaps. The last 2 weeks, he's totaled 6 pressures and a sack. Chandon Sullivan, rough start to the year. Last 2 games in the slot, he's been targeted 6 times, allowed only 2 receptions for 11 yards. Rasul Douglas, he's barely been here 2 weeks. Isaac Yiadom, rough opening drive against the Bears. Douglas comes in, plays over 50 snaps, allows 3 receptions on 6 targets for only 32 yards. Also recorded 5 tackles, just flew around the field. Love the energy that he brings. Henry Black at safety. He's played a number of meaningful snaps this season. On the offensive side of the ball, you got Josh Nyman, John Runyon, Lucas Patrick, all coming in off the bench. And despite all the movement and injuries, the Green Bay Packers offensive line by ESPN's rankings, they're 5th in pass blocking and 9th in run blocking this season. Randall Cobb, he's been an incredibly reliable target on third down for Aaron Rodgers. Al Nazard, as Matt LaFleur calls him, he's being the goon. He's a catalyst, an important part as a blocker within this offense, doing those goon activities, as Matt LaFleur says. And then the tight ends, they've been important and integral part in helping this offensive line go up against some very stout pass rushes and defensive fronts these last few weeks. So it's a team effort. The stars shine, the stars stand out, but all of these players, and I know I've missed some as well, but these are the big ones. These are the role players. These are the backups who are stepping up when injuries occur and helping this Green Bay Packers team get to 5-1. So, as always, there you have it. I appreciate you guys joining me. You can find all these articles over at Dairyland Express. There are going to be more to come, as well as over at Cheesehead TV. And you can find me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. So until next time, friends, as always, I appreciate you tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and go Pack Go.